What I'd like to put forward is this kind of definition. It's a process of striving to become whole or better at something, the measure of which is obtained by an absolute indicator of being flawless or complete in that particular area, being, or state. It is a process as much as it is arriving at a state. History matters, a more perfect union. We talked before about the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Now, there's so much grief going on these days about people looking back at the Founding Fathers and looking at the slavery issue and all of the things that were going on. We have to put all of that into context. Obviously, most of the people in the early days in the Revolution, just like today, they're not perfect. And there were a lot of problems. And I don't think anybody is trying to hide any of those problems. And I think the preamble actually states that the Founding Fathers knew we weren't perfect. There were a lot of problems. It was a very difficult time to bring together all of these different groups that had different economic ideas. You had the southern states that definitely wanted to keep their economy based on a slave-based agrarian economy. And you had the northern groups, which were more religious-based, and they didn't want slavery. The problem is that compromises had to be made, and there were a lot of cultural compromises, slavery being probably the worst one, in order to make a more perfect union. Now, what is a more perfect? Well, it's less unperfect, right? We had to come together or we weren't going to become an entity, a country. We weren't going to become that Republican Federation. But what is perfect? Is it an absolute? Some people believe it's just a relative thing. You know, if one person's nicer than another, then they're perfect and the other person isn't. What I'd like to put forward is this kind of definition. It's a process of striving to become whole or better at something, the measure of which is obtained by an absolute indicator of being flawless or complete in that particular area, being, or state. It is a process as much as it is arriving at a state. In that preamble, we put together these 5 things, which were the basis of why we were putting a country together. To establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. Those were the 5 principles that were put forward and that we were all striving for as a new nation. But perfection certainly wasn't where we were going to get. You've probably heard this before, but maybe didn't know where it came from. This is John Adams, and it's in 1798. He was addressing the officers of the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Division of the Militia of Massachusetts. Because we have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion, avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. This is an important concept because today we're struggling with 2 different kinds of people. Those who have a religious background and have a moral compass in their lives, and those who are purely secular. Now, it's not to say the secular are bad. It's just to say that with a secular or a religious background, there are principles and morals which are not necessarily contained in a secular background. And that is the difference in our laws and in how we are structuring everything we do today. The sad part is when you look at that and you think about this particular statement and how true it really is, it does not portend well for the future. Because we are a divided people right now. We are divided very much along religious and secular lines. The United States of America has never been perfect, but because its people have been largely religious, they have always been striving at becoming individually perfect. This is where the nobility, I think, of our country resides. It's in the people and their striving. Throughout our history, we've had good moments, we've had bad moments. And it's been a hard lesson in many cases. Well, we look at the mistakes that we made in World War II, but we also look at the fact that America was really the reason that World War II was won. Because without America's capabilities, it would have been really difficult. But there were atrocities on both sides in that war, and it was not perfect in any sense. But we still have those issues that we're dealing with, whether we're talking about Vietnam or Iraq, the right and wrong of why we went into different wars and what we have done. We've seen a lot of the good part of America, which compared to so many others, America still is an example to the world. And we have achieved many, many things, which I don't think in the Western world could have ever been achieved without our government. It's one of my favorite. Joseph Smith, Doctrine and Covenants. We have learned by sad experience that it is the nature and disposition of almost all men, as soon as they get a little authority, as they suppose, they will immediately begin to exercise unrighteous dominion. This pretty much sums up our political situation. And it happens time and time and time again, which is why our forefathers were so involved and committed to creating a balance of power, because they realized the only way a government can survive is if there is a balance of power, because if a few men get too much power, it pretty much destroys the country. The impediments to perfection: ego, greed, laziness, political correctness, and all the cultural forces that come with it. We have to, I think, individually understand this concept, because individually, in our communities, in our families, in our states, in our nation, we have to find a way that we can fight against that. First with ourselves, and then with those about us, and how we can correct that. Because what it comes down to is we either have freedom or we have serfdom. And it's a matter of how close to that perfection we come, as to which we have. So history matters in your life.